Let's look at the setup. We're looking at right here. We have some settings for the events, users, the championships and classes, and some help. We'll jump right into the event settings. And what we have are, first, how are we calculating the penalties? In what way are we adding up the allowed time from the transits and the stages? So modified FIA is what we use in most of NASA. FIA is from start of stage to arrival, and the SCCA is from the finish of a stage to the arrival next stage. And then, what is the penalty in that? We also have grace minutes in general for all normal rallies. This will be 0. In desert racing, it can be higher. This warn for stage minutes, stage times over this many minutes. This is for one of the reports that looks at suspicious stage times. So this is saying for anything over what you said here, it'll just kind of flag that in red to say, hey, take a look at this, just a quick visual. What time does the rally start? This is the one place where the overall time of the rally start is set. And so we are looking at really what is the one piece where we will begin all of our calculations for the rest of the controls. Units of distance changes no calculations, just changes what labels are put on some of the reports that get published. Basically the average speeds to use miles per hour or kilometers per hour. The show raw imports, this is looking at whether we have a few of the raw import and exports on our main menu here. So if we turn this on, we will see that we have a few pieces here, some raw imports, some raw import times that don't show up usually. We usually don't do anything in raw mode, and so it's not really useful. So we can clean up the menu just by not having it. CRS data entry, this is using it looking elapsed stage time instead of the time of day to do your actual calculations. This also requires that you put in zeros for the time control before. So essentially everyone starts the stage at 0 and finishes at 10.5 minutes after midnight. This is just a choice. Do we want to show timing penalties for racers who DNF? It just only changes what gets put on the output. Calculate transit penalties. We can turn this whole thing off if we want to, and generally we might do that at the beginning of a rally in the first couple stages when we're just trying to get some first scores out for reseed. Using sub-second time, this is whether we want to use tenths, hundredths, thousandths of a second, and generally we'll leave this on no. But the software will handle up to 3 digits with no problem. So that's the settings for the event. If we go back, we also have some user settings. So in general, the event settings will affect all of the scoring people. The user settings, so this is the number of racers in each drop down. So what we're looking at here is, in this sample data, we have just 4. But you can tune this to its 32 depending on what the size of the screen you're actually using is. So if you have a laptop that has a skinny screen, or you would change this, and each person, on a desktop you might change it again, and each person might have a different number that they need. On the log sheet data order, which number comes first? So if we look at logs, and we're looking at here, it's do we want to have the numbers first or the times first? So it's the same as changing these. So if we change this, it just swaps this, and this is to match up what you're doing with a physical log sheet that you might have in front of you. The verbosity of the racer lists. So for this, we're talking about like the map of penalties. So here we have, you see this is abbreviated, the first 3 letters, and antelope. And we could actually change this to a couple different sizes. And again, it's just how large is your screen, what do you have. If we change this to verbose and just do a refresh, then here now we have the make and model, the co-driver name, and maybe this helps you with whatever you're working on in that particular moment. But in general, brief usually gets you what you want. For the racer lists, you can decide whether to break out cars and bikes or leave everything just by a raw sorting of what you have. So this is for, if we jump over to, say, the map, in this particular case, we are sorting by this raw number. Just all the numbers are all together. And it depends what kind of event you're doing and what the numbering scheme is. So if we say split car motos and we do a refresh, then all of the bikes will be at the bottom, all the cars will be at the top, each group sorted within their order. And then we have Pro Mode, and what this does is on time cards and log entry, this is pretty sparse. There's nothing here, and then we can actually have it with a little bit more instruction on it. And here's some information down at the bottom, how to enter the data. So once you get familiar with how to key in the data, you can safely turn on Pro Mode and clean up the screen and maybe save some ridiculously tiny piece of bandwidth. That's fine. So those are the per user preferences. Switching events. So right now I'm looking at the 2000 Black River stages. So switching events, generally after you've been scoring for a while, you'll have permissions to get to a variety of other events. So the other events that you have access to will be listed here, and clicking on one of these changes 2016 Sandblast Rally, which event you are working on and which data you're shown. And then here, obviously I have all the new drop downs and all the new data for that rally. The web appearance. This handles what actually gets put on top and on bottom of all of the files that are generated on the public side. So this has nothing to do with what is shown here within the admin. So we have three boxes, the header and the footer, and then the style sheet. So the style sheet gets inserted here where we have this, we can see wherever you put in this style bracket. Within here, it'll put the header there. So all of this is done inline, and this shows up if we look at the view external site. It is what generates these graphics at the top. The logos down at the bottom. So that's all controlled here in this web appearance. Championships, relatively straightforward. The order that they're in, the abbreviations. This is what's going to be used everywhere within the back end. The full names will be used on the reports. So racer count. So it's not how many people that we're expecting. It's how many people are in each race vehicle, and this is sort of going to be related to how many positions get awarded for trophies and things like that. So for these, to get these correct, we should have 2 here, 1 here, and 2 here. And it's really just getting the motorcycles and bikes set up properly. And then trophy count is how many trophies are we publishing, are we giving away for each group. So in this one, this is for overall. So we may be giving away many more in class, but overall, how many giving away? So for the Atlantic Rally Cup, we give away all our trophies in class. So here, this number is 0. So publish, we want to publish all of these. This is whether they get generated onto the public site. And then the graph on index, what we're looking at right here is this is the index page, the main page of the results. Do we want to put a graph here? And so if we notice, we actually had Atlantic Rally Cup, no graph on index. That's because we're doing it by class on the index. And then here's the Atlantic Rally Moto Cup overall position. So we have 2 places that we need to do this, and they're both very similar. So if we go back and we look at, well, we can get to it here as well, classes. So here it's the same thing, graph on index. Which ones do we want? And for all of these, they have a master order, but really you need to connect them to the correct championship. So again, here's the abbreviation, and here are the overall pieces that we need for both of those. And finally, help. We have a lot of help. So this is divided up into the general areas that match the tabs, and we also have the option to see all help text at once. So as you can see, you know, 30 or 40 pages of very detailed discussion of what's going on. So this is the setup. Once it is set up at the beginning of the event, very little reason to come back to it. So usually it's once and done.